Welcome to the Q&A series with Jill Eng, Mindful Reality. These are specific questions asked by real people, answered through the lens of this practice. I also offer coaching sessions in this work, as well as the opportunity to purchase personalized recorded responses to your own questions through private recordings. Please refer to the website for more information on both these services. Okay, so today I have a question from Abigail. Abigail says, I deal a lot with desire and wanting to change that desire. I would like to be less attached to the outcomes of my life. Maybe I'll be alone, maybe not. I want to be okay with being alone, though. Would you be able to speak to that? So, wanting to change desire means wanting to cause or decause a thought or a thought pattern. And this is not something that's possible. So let's break it down. The mind just has thoughts surfacing all day long. And that is not a process. It's like blinking or swallowing. It's not something one could interfere with. And then that's because there's no person behind the thoughts. There is no I or self centered in the brain that is causing the thoughts to occur. So, in fact, the I thought itself is something that is produced by the brain. So, let's not make desire our enemy. I understand it's painful, like unbearably painful, to have desire of things that don't come to fruition. But let's find a different framework for them. What if it's okay to have desires, but to look at real life and to see what is something that is actually reliable to attach to? So Abigail says, I would like to be less attached to the outcomes of my life. Let's get attached to something that is reliable and trustworthy and a guarantee of occurrence. So for me, in this practice of mindful reality, I look at physical realities. Physical realities that are absolute if a person is alive. So if I'm alive, it means that my body is here in space all the time, doing something all the time, all day long. There is never a time that my body is not productive. Now, there comes that word bubbling up in my mind, desire. But you say I'm productive, but I don't feel productive. Okay, so there is a hierarchy, right? Desire is about this hierarchy of things that we wish to be happening. We have an agenda. We have certain conditioning, mental conditioning that comes from our personal past and our cultural environment and habits and all of that. So it's painful, to have these desires that are not the things that we happen to be spending our time doing. But I am interested in finding a way to feed the ego what it wants. Because why not? It's there. It's and the ego is about desire. So let's try it. It's not as satisfying or glamorous as if one's desires were being met. But Abigail talks about attachment, emotionally attaching to the outcomes of her life. And we do have outcomes in our life all day long, right? We have things that we do all day long. And what I find interesting to attach to is the guarantee that I will always be doing something. Always. And if that is happening, if a body in space during its day and week and month and year and lifetime is physically occupied all the time, that makes it very plain and clear that no other physical activity could be occurring at the same time. And again, if one focuses on the deficiency of what isn't happening and comparing it to the hierarchy of what one wishes were happening, then that is painful. But I would say just let that be. Let the desires float around. Get familiar with them. know what they are, just so you're not shocked when they come up. It's just thinking. And if Abigail is, or anybody is somebody who is, familiar with meditation in the sense of just watching thoughts come and go and not clinging to them or pushing them away, that's what I'm recommending in this case, right? A desire or a desirous thought pattern is just a type of thought. And you just see it. Let it float by. Acknowledge that it is a thought. There's nothing special about a desirous thought over any other kind of thought. It's just a thought. So let that be, right? There's two parallel tracks going on. There's thinking, which is going on all the time in a brain, building a kind of self-model or various kinds of self-models that are the recipients of these thoughts and feelings. But that whole thing that people call consciousness, all of that's just going on all the time. So let it be. Meditate it away. Not like you're pushing thoughts away, but just meditate. And so you see it humming in the background. Then let's look at real life outcomes. And also, as I said, the sort of guarantee of what real life produces. We don't feel like we are occupying space all day long. Meaning, we don't feel like we are in the space all day long. People talk about the word presence, and I don't love that word because it kind of implies that unless you're feeling present, you aren't present. And maybe I'm changing the definition here of present, but we're always present. A body is always present, and it's giving weight, head included on the spine and the body, a full body, a whole body is giving weight all day long to some surface of furniture or a ground that is holding it up. And if you look at that phenomenon, a body on a surface, you would make a sentence, then that would tell you what the action was. I am sitting on the bed, talking into a microphone. Okay, now I can attach to that. I can emotionally attach to that. That's an outcome of my life. That's an outcome of my life because it's the future of 10 minutes ago. It's the future of a year ago when I wondered in a year, what will I be doing in a year from now? Oh, look at that. I'm sitting on a bed talking into a microphone. Again, real life is never going to be as interesting, well, once in a while when things happen that are what we desire. But in general, real life is never going to be as interesting as the way we think about and imagine life. But let's get attached to the real outcomes of our life, because I think it's super cool that the body is always moving and it's always doing things. And most of the time it's not what I imagined, or even if it's something I planned, it's not exactly the way I planned it. So get accustomed at looking at your body in the space and then see how it moves. Watch your mouth move when it's talking. Watch your hands move. Watch your legs move when you get up to go somewhere. Just to acknowledge that there is truly an organism that is called Abigail, that is the name of what our name is, that is really the only representation of us, and it is moving through the space all day long. The reason that I get some satisfaction out of attaching to my physical reality and my behavior and actions is because in my mind, I feel like I come and go. I do this, I don't do something. I do something, I don't do something. I'm productive, I'm not productive. And there's sort of all this pain around, the things that I wish were happening, not happening. Instead of realizing that my body is occupied 24/7, there's never one teeny weeny speck of time that my body, my organism isn't doing something. And so let that be a backdrop, just a constant backdrop and something to put up against the feeling of deficiency. And I bring up the word deficiency because that's what desire makes me think of. Desire is implying that there is something missing. And I think that, traditionally when we try to feel okay about our lives, it's still something of a thought process. But I think for me at least, when I get very in touch with the physical meat, substantiality and actualization of my body, my flesh in the space, moving, doing things, saying things, writing things, cooking things, exercising, walking, driving, whatever it is, gardening, that needs to be fascinating. Okay, so I'm kind of getting off on a tangent. So that's what I would get attached to, is the real stream of continual physical activity. That is the only thing we can really call action. And get attached to that and recognize that it is each little bodily movement, gesture by a body, each little doing is an outcome. It's an outcome of a thought that came before it. I wonder what I'll do tomorrow. I wonder what I'll do next month. I wonder where I'll be, what kind of behavior I'll be in, or what my life will be like in a year from now. This is it. This is it. When you see your body, look at it. Look at your head, how it moves on the spine, and how it looks around the room. And you're an organism, a biological machine. That is fascinating. Okay, so enough of that for the moment. So the point is, to summarize that, is that it is healthy and natural and fine to get attached to the real outcomes of your life because it's safe. Because there will always be real outcomes every moment of a day. The issue is that we're not seeing what real life is versus imagination. So the first part of Abigail's statement was wanting to change desire. And I just said, okay, so desire is a kind of thought pattern, and you can't stop your thoughts, and you can't control what they're going to be. So if you're someone who's familiar with meditation, treat it like a meditation. They're humming in the background. No thought is something that needs to be taken particularly seriously. In fact, no thought needs to be taken seriously at all, because it's just a thought. And it bubbles up and it dissolves, and it comes and it goes, and blah, blah, blah. All right, the second point was Abigail saying, I would like to be less attached to the outcomes of my life. And I just explained why perhaps it could be useful to let yourself be attached to the surface you're on, to the fact that you're a whole body that never disappears or divides itself, a functioning organism that does do things. And I would bet that there are some things that, we all do that we are okay with in the moment. Those are the things we overlook. Those are the things that are never going to fall into the category of desire, because desire is always going to be implying an absence of something. And all I want to say about that is, because we are present all day long in the space doing something, there is really no room for something else. So desire kind of doesn't make sense. Okay, the third section, I want to be okay with being alone. My response to that is, are you alone? This sounds very much like a Byron Katie kind of question. Are you alone? Okay, so Abigail might say, well, I mean, in terms of having a partner or an intimate relationship. I want to be okay with being alone. I would say, allow all your feelings in. Don't try to pretend or convince yourself that you're okay emotionally with something you're not okay with. I mean, that is just useless, because thoughts are going to come anyway. And I think that the more we kind of resist certain kinds of thought patterns, they knock on the door even harder. So I would say, let your feelings in all the time, whatever they are. If one day you're like, I hate it, it sucks to be alone, feel it. It's just a thought. Again, I kind of equate thoughts and feelings as the same thing. Let it just come in. And what I would say is, let yourself feel what you feel. And then make sure you are acknowledging something else that can kind of, again, please the ego in a way that fulfills the mind to feel like it is doing something well, right? I mean, it's hard to know when someone says, I want to be okay with being alone. It's hard to know for all of us if we are actually sad because we feel lonely, or because we have been conditioned, brainwashed in some ways, to feel like we should not be not having a romantic partner. And I think that romantic pursuits and the thought patterns that are attached to the desire of wanting to be with somebody else, I would say that for me, in all of this work, I recognize what thoughts are, that every feeling is a thought. And I just treat thoughts like a meditation. Like there's just acknowledge that there are two parallel tracks. There is thinking is just going on, kind of like if a stomach were gurgling all day long. But then know that the other, the track that's parallel to that is not only your real life, but something that is solid and exciting in its own way, is that you are always 100% of the time living correctly. And that, I think, at least for me, can do some pretty good work to counter the deficiency that one feels when they're alone. So if you want to be okay with being alone, let's find something exciting about life itself and your behavior. Your behavior is about the fact that you have no way to interfere with your bodily movements and what I call the involuntarism of human behavior and just bones moving all day long, putting us in various activities. This, because we can't get behind that flow, means that the flow is correct. Because there would never be a way for some other flow to be occurring. And when I say flow, I mean the body moves from this task to this task, to this task to this task, and even sleeping and lying down and seemingly doing nothing is still a task, right? You're occupying space, your body's doing something all day long. Because we can't get behind it means that we're doing it the right way, because there's no real we in the head that's governing that. It's just the body functioning. So you function the correct way. That's very exciting to me. And now I want to say, when you say something like, I want to be okay with being alone, keep remembering that the only knowledge we have about our life and that we will ever have about our life is what we have done up till now. So maybe up till now, Abigail has been what she would consider alone in her life. But there is no way to know anything that will ever happen in Abigail's life beyond what Abigail sees of herself in the space in this moment. So when we say, I want to be okay with being alone, maybe Abigail is saying, I want to be okay with the possibility that for the rest of my life, I will be alone. And that's fine. But the truth is, why even speculate about something that you could never know anything about? Let's just deal with reality. Reality is what has happened up till now. And that's the past. That's over. So if you want to be okay with being alone, then be okay with the fact that up till now you've been alone. And every time you check in with yourself for the rest of your life, it will be up till now. So I speak for myself. I look at my body, what it's doing in this moment, and I know that even this is always over as soon as I see it. But all I know of my life is what I see in the flesh in the moment, and that is already over. So that and everything before it is what has happened in my life up till now. That's all I'm ever going to know. So I'm okay with my past. And I know that not everybody is okay with their past. And I'm not saying one should be if those emotions are hard, depending upon how people have acted in their life. But when someone says, I want to be okay with being alone, are we talking about now? Are we talking about the past? Are we talking about the future? And I think it's useful to recognize that there is really no way to predict the future. There is truly no way. Because 5 minutes ago, I couldn't know where I would be in 5 minutes. Now, I'm just going to say this, and this is because this is my work. Actions, from where I sit, are bodily movements. In fact, skeletal movements, skeletal jointal gestures in the space. That's all an action can ever be. Even words coming out of our mouth or signing a paper or writing something, that's a bodily movement. Those actions are not the way we imagine action, right? We think of action being the way our mind pictures scenes in our life. The mind pictures actions as scenes and images. But actions are bone movements in real time in the space, on the surfaces that we are on. And it's kind of amazing to realize that, yeah, it's one thing to say, oh, I could never predict my future, but it's also another thing to say that you could never predict your bone movements. That would just seem ludicrous, right? Kind of ridiculous. Like, well, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about my life. Yeah, but your life and the things I do, but your life and the things you do are your bone movements. And so predicting what you're going to do, even 10 minutes from now, means you would have to predict what your bones were going to do. So I want you to really understand, look at your body, look at time, look at yourself in a room or outdoors or in the car, and understand what I'm talking about, that your actions are just your bodily movements in real time. And they are spontaneous as the weather and anything else, which makes sense because we are just made of matter, right? Just cells, molecules, atoms, and whatever is subatomic. So when you think about your life and your behavior in the future, what you're talking about is what your bone movements are going to be. And that would be crazy to think that you could ever know such a thing. So align with that. Align with that, this inner conversation about being alone and, trying to get familiar and comfortable with the concept of being alone. Well, okay, if you've been alone up till now in your life, then let yourself acknowledge that that's over and that you don't know what your bones are going to do next and what kind of people you're going to be interacting with or circumstances or events in your life that pop out of nowhere. We meet new people all the time. We have new interactions. It could be something like bumping into somebody on a street. I mean, that's how simple it is in real time. And just know you could never predict your bone movements or anybody else's. So the predictive nature of the mind that is attached to desire, which is really being attached to the absence of something, just know that that is about the past. Because when you see your body in the space now, that is looking at the past. And I think that's good news because it's behind us and we don't have to feel badly about what is behind us. So I hope some of this made sense and answered the statement and question of Abigail for Abigail and for the rest of us. See you next time. Thank you for listening to the Q&A series with Jill Eng, Mindful Reality. And if you are interested in coaching sessions or personalized recordings, please refer to the website at jillengmindfulreality.com. Thanks, and see you next time.